Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Friedman, and I'm joined in the studio by our next guest, and our guest is Shelley Amster, Shelley with ShelleyCO. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you so much.
You have a fascinating background and how you got into business. You want to tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how you ended up where you are?
I'd be happy to. So it's a funny story when you add it all up. I guess it's a case of being at the right time, at the right place, and having the ability to know to just walk in the door. So I started off with a bachelor's degree in medical technology in a community hospital in Hartford, Connecticut, working in the clinical lab, just doing what most medical technologists do, work in the various different departments. And a friend of mine was working in OBGYN and was getting married and settling down and said, the chairman of the department wanted to open up a lab. Would you like to start it? So I...
Talk about being thrust in.
Oh my God. And I'm thinking, OBGYN, well, what 25-year-old woman wouldn't want to work in OBGYN? So it turned out that he was setting up the lab to support the first abortion clinic in Connecticut. He was developing a laparoscope with one of the major players in the industry at the time. I'm not sure if it was Siemens or Philips or whatever. And he was working up patients for transsexual changes, both male and female. And he needed someone to do all the lab work for these patients that are in a very sensitive space. So they didn't have to go to the clinical lab and be embarrassed. And so I was hired to do all of that and set it all up and got to be at the side of the patient when he was doing all of these things. I mean, even while they're doing an abortion, we were videotaping fetal development with this new scope.
Wow. So really at the cutting edge in terms of the technology.
Magazine. I mean, it was, or Look, or whatever it was. And a few years later, he hired from Harvard's first fellowship program in reproductive endocrinology, a physician, to set up an infertility arm. So abortions in the morning, infertility in the afternoon. About 2 years later, things were the talk about Steptoe and Edwards and Baby Brown in the UK was the talk of the town, and we were all talking about how do we get there. And so I got invited with my boss to go to the talk when Steptoe and Edwards came to Connecticut, and I met a guy named Alan DeCherney who was setting up a team at Yale. And he clearly mentioned that he was putting together the best of the best, and he needed a lab director. And I went home, and I had just gotten married, and I said to my husband, damn it, I wish I had finished that PhD. They're going to be setting up a lab, and I know they're going to want a PhD. Now, meanwhile, you understand, every fellow, every resident from the University of Connecticut Medical School had rotated through my lab. So I had trained a lot of people about all of the lab things that you need to know.
A lot of osmosis going on.
Yeah, really. Yeah. So he said, has that stopped you? Well, why not give this guy a call? So I took all the gumption I had and I gave him a call, and his assistant said, hold on, I'll put him on the phone. And he said, can you be here tomorrow morning with your resume? Resume? Who had a resume? I sat there with my Smith Corona, so now I'm really dating myself. Stayed up all night because...
One key at a time.
One key at a time.
No whiteout.
One page, no whiteout. And I wanted the perfect thing, and I only had 1 or 2 publications at the time, and I'm thinking, how do you go to Yale without a dozen publications? I showed up at the interview. He never asked for the resume, and the guy is like, short as can be. The papers are piled up above him, and he stands up with the bow tie. He says, come on, we're going to go meet the team. There was no interview. I met these people from all over the world that he had brought in. I was hired on the spot.
Fabulous.
And
talk about being in the right place at the right time.
20% cut in pay to go to Yale from Mount Sinai Hospital. Why not? Gave up 3 weeks of vacation because I had to start like now. And it changed my life. I worked with the people today that are the guy in Israel, the guy in Greece, the highest woman that went to Stanford, Columbia, Wyeth Pharmaceuticals Women's Division. I mean, I could go on. And they've remained my friends. I can go to them for anything. They sit on boards, they're advisors. And it realized that it was the start of my network.